everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. And today I want to talk about roleplay, reality, and power exchange. This is something that's been sort of dripping in the back of my head for a couple of weeks, and well, I just wanted to have a good old-fashioned rambly chat about it. This is not going to be the sort of video where I'll be giving you all clear-cut, definite answers to anything. In fact, I'm actually excited to hear what you all have to say in the comments about this one, especially because this is something I think I've changed my mind about like at least 2 or 3 times before. But I am hoping by the end of this chat, wherever we end up, we'll at least have gotten some interesting thoughts to chew on and a few different perspectives to weigh. My most recent musings on this topic were actually sparked by an interview clip I saw between Holly Randall and Damiana Chi, where Damiana Chi is talking about the healing power of BDSM and how validating it can be to be seen while being in the truth of who you are, where she also talks about role play.
But then, in the process of the play comes the healing, because as we're playing with each other, it's so validating to have another person witness you for being in the truth of who you are, because when you're playing this way, like, okay, so we're role playing, right? But we're role playing parts of ourselves that are real. They're real. They're parts that we want to feel, that are in there, that we want to express.
And I don't know, just there was something in that really got my brain turning. Because yeah, what does it mean to do role play? When we're doing BDSM, are we just acting out a role, or are we always revealing some inner truth? How real can we be in our expression when we're also dealing with societal norms and laws and personal boundaries or limitations? And this is why I'm always nervous about making any kind of definite statement when it comes to the emotional and mental side of kink, because the unsatisfying answer is that it depends on the person. This is something that's always bothered me when I've read certain books on kink that shall remain nameless, because in their quest to give the reader a better understanding of DS or BDSM more broadly on a basic level, they make these prescriptive statements about how submission feels or the mental connection one will have to their dominance or submission if you are a real dom or a real sub. And I know for myself and many other people that it doesn't feel like a role when I'm a submissive. It feels like I'm in my proper place and it feels right. And relationships that don't have this aspect to them are totally fine. I mean, I'm polyamorous. Not all of my relationships in adulthood have always involved kink, let alone DS. But there's a sense that there's always a little something missing when that isn't there. Not even because I want to do kink with every person I'm with, but because when I do feel that connection with someone, it unlocks a whole other level of emotions that I don't have when BDSM, but again, especially power exchange, isn't present. And not to bring up this particular conversation again, because it really should be its own video, but I think this is also why many people think of their kink interest as being an orientation, because it is not just an interest or a hobby or even something spicy in the bedroom that they particularly enjoy a lot. It's part of who they are and how they relate to others on such a deep level that if it's not present, attraction isn't present. And ultimately, isn't that what sexual orientation is about? Describing the circumstances under which we feel attraction? And this is not an argument that we should be adding a K to LGBT or something. This is just an invitation to remember that human sexuality is complicated and messy, and the language we currently use is only our best guess attempt at trying to describe an experience that, for some, can be nebulous and hard to pin down, or not completely captured by the terms we currently use. But yeah, all this is to say, I get it when people don't think about their BDSM as a role play thing and never feel like they are being someone or something they aren't. Heck, even when I'm doing puppy play on my hands and knees and barking, it doesn't feel like I'm pretending to be a dog in some intentional way, even if that's maybe how people might describe pet play. It's more like I'm letting out a part of who I am that likes to do cute stuff and be silly for fun, and this is just the acceptable container to put that behavior in an adult relationship that makes sense to me. And it's not like, I bark at people in the grocery store if I didn't have this container to put that desire in. But I think my life would be a lot less enjoyable if I could never ever let out that sweet, silly, carefree part of me that just happens to manifest in the form of a puppy. And I know this is the case because I am distinctly happier when pet play is part of my life somehow, somewhere. And I am sure lots of people can understand that, whether it be with power exchange or pet play or DDLG or caregiver little or age play or whatever their kink is. But at the same time, though, there are aspects of my kink that aren't really about letting out my truth, getting to do bondage with someone and relaxing into the feeling of rope. That feels like letting out a true part of who I am. But sitting on a spanking bench at a public venue and getting a flogging, it's not that it's not true, it's just secondary. The genuine part of that isn't the setting or the activity, it's the act of trusting my partner so much that I let them do that to me. And I'm letting them facilitate a deeply vulnerable experience using my body to get to my heart and my mind. It could just as easily be a over-the-knee spanking or a whipping at a post or whatever combination you like. Choosing to do those things feels more like taking on a role because it's about getting into the underlying deeper parts that are below that surface level behavior. Am I making any sense, or do I just sound like I've thought way too much about this and I'm actually losing my mind? So maybe to get us slightly back on track, I also want to discuss how the act of submission feels, because I do distinguish between acts during a scene, especially in pack play, and how day-to-day relating in power exchange works in my brain. If my partner gives me a task, I'm not intentionally entering submissive role mode in that moment. I already was submissive. I had been the entire time we were together, and I even was before I met them. And there are times when it's hard, right? When my partner tells me to get into the cold plunge at the sauna, I don't want to do it. It sucks, and I hate the cold, and if I was left to my own devices, I would never willingly get into a cold plunge ever again. I can barely stand a cold shower for more than a couple of seconds. But in that moment, when I have a little bit to decide, I'm thinking, am I going to do this? And my heart says yes, because it's what they want me to do. And I know that they are pushing me to be better and try new scary things and show me that doing those new scary things is okay. And it's in that decision, in that choice to say yes, when I could say no, that I think submission really exists. Not in the specifics of feeling like you're playing a role to a certain level, or how you dress, or even how you act, or what forms of speech you use. It's choosing to do the hard thing because it is hard, because you see the path they're leading you down, and you trust their vision of where that path is going to take you. And I wasn't really expecting this video to have deep philosophical musings on what the heart of submission is, but there you go, a little freebie for you. And since I am already in the process of philosophizing already, it's maybe worth thinking about what exactly we mean when we talk about playing a role, and what does it mean to do a role. And I think in the kink world, we usually understand role-playing as being, improvising or pretending to be something you're not on purpose. Like people who aren't nurses in real life doing medical role-play, where they have a little nurse get-up and they use a comically large syringe for no reason. Heck, even people who are actually nurses do that kind of role-play sometimes because it's fun and it's different. And that's part of what playing a role can be. Sure, pretend and acting, but it doesn't have to just be that, because I mean, we all play roles like in society, you know, right? We have these assumed positions that we take on in particular situations. Technically, being a daughter is a role, or being a girlfriend, or being a creative at work. Does that mean we're pretending to be something we aren't when we're dating someone or making art for a job? I mean, and no, of course not. I mean, thinking about it that way would be kind of ridiculous. And if you are doing it like that, maybe you shouldn't be dating that person or be in the line of work, you know, in my humble opinion. Anyway, but human society dictates that we play different parts of who we are at different times as appropriate, as much as some companies are moving towards ideas like being your whole self in the workplace. You aren't really ever being your whole self at work, right? They're the pieces of yourself that you are safe to be at work to the extent you want to present them, which is kind of true for any relational dynamic. The point of power exchange is to go deeper into that true self and reveal more of those pieces than you might at other times and other places. That's the vulnerability part of the dynamic, which, again, in my humble opinion, is the sauce that keeps a dynamic working long term, besides, you know, the spicy, hot, fun bits that initially draw us to it. So, basically, what I'm saying is, roles are only fake if we decide they're fake. For some, the idea that when they're submissive, they're just playing a role is offensive. And for others, it's like, I'm not like this all the time, everywhere with everyone. So, like, of course it's a role. What do you mean? And, you know, because I haven't done this so far, I want to take a moment here to just validate the folks who do see what they do in a strictly role type of lens, even understanding it to be a persona or a mask they wear temporarily that isn't reflective of their everyday self. If your motivation in kink is transformation or pretending to be something you aren't because that's what turns you on, great. Some people see BDSM as this tool for deep self-expression and meaning-making, and for others it's about just getting to be someone or something different for a while. Being anywhere along that spectrum is normal and okay. I think this is more likely to be true for people who just keep their kink in the bedroom and either don't do it 24/7 in their home or don't participate in the larger kink community. Of course, if you don't see kink as part of your core identity, you are going to be more likely to see it as just a role, right? And I think that's something that kind of like irked me a little bit about the Holly Randall clip, and is why I was musing on it so much, because it kind of came off as this attempt at a universal explanation that I don't think applies to even most kinksters. Our views of BDSM are influenced by the context in which we do it. As a lifestyler, I'm going to see it one way. A professional dom is going to see it a different way. This is why you get so many quotes and articles about how submissive men are actually all Fortune 500 company CEOs and they have power all day, so they want to give up power at night in order to relax. When the data we do have shows that power inside the bedroom tends to correlate with social and financial power you have outside of the bedroom too. Of course, you'd see a correlation between submissives and people with power as an experienced professional pro-dom, because who else has the money and freedom to drop $900 on a session? The reality is a lot more complicated because the vast majority of people who do BDSM, over 90%, never take it outside of their monogamous bedroom. So we can't really easily ask them how they feel about these things, whether or not it's a game they play or part of who they are on a deep level. And chances are they probably haven't really thought about it at all because it's simply not that important. But when there is doubt, always assume nuance. So I am going to assume that it's not always a divine experience of inner truth. It can be, but it can also be casual game playing too. I think sometimes in our quest for wider acceptance, we can be too quick to overstate the role BDSM may play in everyone else's lives. BDSM isn't okay because it's a healing experience or a way to connect to your inner divine feminine. It's okay because humans are weird and wacky creatures, and variance between people and relationships is what it means to be normal as a human being. But There is one more thought that I'm left with at the end of all of this, and I don't really know how to fully weave this into the rest of the conversation, so bear with me. But it is something that I got really stuck on the last time I waffled about this a couple of years ago. And the thought is, how can something ever be more than just a role when there are so many societal limitations on how and where we can do our relationships? Are we deluding ourselves when we try to say, I'm a submissive, when those things are in the way? Like, contracts aren't really contracts. They aren't legally enforceable. They would never hold up in a court of law. They only work because we decide they work. Same thing with slave registry numbers and barcodes and tattoos and things too. Those are just fancy role-play window dressing, and they can be really meaningful, but they're meaningful without any outside enforcement mechanism. So, like, do they count? To some people, no, and investing in them is ridiculous because of that, because they're not real. And to some people, they don't care what the outside world thinks or does at all, and it's about how they feel within the relationship, and that's all that matters. If it feels real to the participants, that's what makes it real. But where the danger zone is where you don't want to accept the limitations of reality in society. I'm talking about the kind of people who take, no, we're not doing roleplay, this is for real, this is for life, to like the next level. The people who talk about how their S-type is never ever allowed to leave them under any circumstances, and if they do, they should be allowed to chase them down and forcibly bring them back. Or the people who think that all people of one gender are inherently submissive because of some genetic predisposition to it. You know, the male and female superiority people. Or, heaven forbid, the people who do their kink openly in public because if you don't like it, don't look, it's a free country. Like, I am so sorry, Master BDJ, but our society is just not okay with naked slaves eating under the table at fine dining establishments yet, so you're gonna have to build a bridge and just get over that one. The issue is, people who have these beliefs often view their attitudes and behaviors as justified because it does feel real to them. Like, of course, if it was just roleplay for them, they wouldn't make the waiter serve their S-type under the table, but because it is real, they feel like they should have an unlimited pass to act however they want in public or around other people in general. But I hope that all of us watching can agree that that's not the case, right? While it's okay to want outside acceptance and to not be ostracized for your relationships, there are limitations. Health code violations and breaking human trafficking laws being some of those limitations. Ultimately, what we should be focusing on is our internal experience and our own happiness rather than waiting to be validated by either other kinksters or the general public. And I just find this whole conversation so fascinating because I've really seen people talk about it both ways. Some people are very ardently defending the idea that all kink is ultimately just roleplay, and if you think about it any deeper than that, you're delusional and you need help, and safe BDSM never feels that real to people. And then you also have people that are saying, well, this is part of who I am not happy in vanilla relationships, and it would actually be delusional for me to deny that, or to pretend I feel like I'm playing a role when this feels like I'm doing something real. And I don't know if the two sides can ever come to an agreement, but I don't think it's necessarily about one idea being correct so much as understanding where you fall, how you relate to kink, and communicating that to other people. And I wonder if this is an underlying factor that can cause some dysfunction and especially power exchange relationships, because if one person is going into it feeling like, haha, I'm going to play the role of being a dom because that's like hot and fun, and I'm not like, they don't have any personal attachment to that as a label or an identity, just a thing they do sometimes, and it's, you know, enjoyable, but it's not part of who they are. If they end up being with a person for whom submission is this deeply, deeply held belief, like, of course you're going to run into things because there's going to be different levels of investment, there's going to be different levels of desire there, and it's probably not going to work out super great in the end if you have a lot of differences in how you see the way that you fit into this whole conversation. And I think, you know, a lot of it could probably be splitting hairs, but I think we don't always know how other people think about things, right? And we have a tendency to assume that in the absence of information, people feel the same way about things that we feel about them. And I am confident there's going to be people who watch this video or leave a comment who are going to say, oh, I had no idea other people thought about it that way. There's going to be people for whom it's always been obviously just a role they play sometimes. And for people who are like, why the hell would you do this if it's just like a thing you do for kicks occasionally and not like part of who you are? That does not make any sense. I'm very curious to see where my audience falls along this spectrum. So at the end of the day, what this is ultimately a conversation about, more than anything, is just understanding that people are different than you and relate to things differently, and there's not one right or wrong way. It's about figuring out where you are at in this whole experience. And, to be honest, I didn't know how many thoughts I would have about this until I started to write about it. And it's something that's been really important to me because I have gone back and forth on it, like I mentioned. Like, I think at one point I really strongly felt that you had to accept that, like, BDSM is ultimately just role-playing because I was so concerned about the people that were, in my opinion, acting and thinking in kind of destructive, unhealthy ways because they were so certain that, I'm really gonna sign away my whole life in this 24/7 relationship, to my dom, to, like, death and beyond. And it's like, that's, like, not enforceable, right? Like, can we just check in about what actually happens here? Because you do have people that, there's predators of all different flavors, and not to end this on a downer note, but it is worth mentioning that if you are somebody who relates to BDSM through more of a identity lens or an orientation lens or just it being part of a true expression of who you are, if you're one of those people, it's a lot easier for somebody to come up to you and sell you a lot of garbage about how, real submissive do this, or how you have to do this, or like, I'm going to train you and mold you to be this perfect thing, and I'm going to own you for forever, and you're my property forever. And like, people believe that. And that happens with pro-doms, it happens with lifestyle people, all across the spectrum. It's one of the things that somebody can take advantage of. So if you are a person for whom kink is a big part of who you are, just be really cautious about the types of people you get into relationships with. Really pay attention to the lines that they are trying to sell you about what is possible in kink. If they tell you that, like, they're gonna make you sign a legally enforceable contract, or they're gonna barcode you so they can find you anywhere in the world, and whatever it is they say, I honestly don't know. If it sounds more permanent than it probably should be, you need to check in about that. And I think it's fun to do role play where you pretend that something is super permanent, but you have to know that's what you're doing. And if you're being made to believe that that is reality, that's a red flag. So, yes, those are my thoughts about this situation. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts about this one in a comment down below. I have been doing a lot of more intense videos lately about various, BDSM cases in the news and just a lot of trauma and abuse stuff, to be perfectly honest. And I'm not burnt out, but I do need a little bit of a breather because there's more coming down the pipeline, and I want to keep making those more serious videos, but it feels like my brain is taking a shower when I make videos like this, because I'm just like, I'm so inspired, and I'm like, ooh, this is a really cool idea, and like, I like having these. I want to do more of this. So we're going to take a little break for maybe a couple weeks. We're going to focus on more videos like this one. We will be covering some more serious stories in the news. We'll also be doing a movie review for a kink movie that came out in the last couple of months I think y'all have been waiting for. So there's fun videos. Don't worry, it's not just all doom and gloom on this channel anymore. But thank you all again so much for watching. Leave your thoughts in a comment down below. I'd really appreciate it. Whether you agree, disagree, or something else in between, I'd love to know. If you want to support what I do, if you're not already, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all different kink and BDSM related subjects. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best way to do that is with Patreon. Link to that will be down below. If you do already support over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.